All right, welcome to the Agriscaping podcast. This is Justin Rohner, your host, and I've actually got a wonderful special guest. Lives right here in the valley near me and right down the street from Jake Mace basically as well. And so I've got Jacq Davis here from Epic Yard Farm, and it is ironic, I think, that so many people up in some of these food summits, they all come from Arizona. I think maybe it's because it's so hard to grow here, and when you can grow stuff here like Jacq can, you quickly become famous, I think. You feel famous yet, Jacq?
A little bit. when you go to different local nurseries and people recognize you and come up and talk to you, you do feel a little bit of the celebrity status.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Sometimes I'll be in a line at a nursery and people start, like they're mumbling behind my back for a little bit, and then they'll say, "Hey, are you that guy that has that trampoline garden?" Or they'll ask funny questions like that. I'm like, "Oh yeah." So that stuff kind of happens. So you're becoming more famous. That's kind of fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the beauty of it is it's because of kind of what you've developed, and I'm excited to kind of share with others who you are, and at the same time get to know you a little bit more as well, kind of where you came from, how you got to this point, because we've crossed paths many times over the years and stuff, worked together on different things here and there, but yeah, I've never really had a chance to, you and I, just to talk, I guess. We just, it's like we're always learning, but we're never really talking about kind of where we came from and stuff. So this is our chance. And so I'm going to let you even ask me questions if you want. This isn't just the time to get to know Jacq. A lot of people out there probably don't even know much about me because I don't really share, I guess. I don't know what they want to know. So I'm going to, let's see, I've got some questions that we've kind of outlined out some things as we've kind of explored who you are, but I'm so excited that you exist online now because for a long time you didn't really have much going on that people could really see, touch, feel what you're up to. But maybe you could share with us a little bit more about what's going on and what Epic Yard Farm is, kind of how you got it started.
So Epic Yard Farm is kind of, for us, I started a Facebook page online so I can have a place to do journaling pretty much and sharing with my friends what I'm growing and what I'm experimenting. But before we have this property, I've never gardened before. I always tell people I could look at a plant and they'll die. I basically have black thumb.
Which could be a good thing, I've heard, because those are black thumbs, they grow dirt first. They grow things, they grow compost, which is awesome, right? That's what we need first.
Yeah, good dirt for sure, but that was a sharp learning curve to even figure out what, native soil is like for Arizona, and that is definitely something we need to share with people how to successfully grow here in Arizona, is to kind of help the amazing local native soil along to supply our edible plants with all the minerals that already exist. It's just there's not enough organic matter in the soil naturally to supply.
So when you started your garden, tell me what the soil was like when you first started. I mean, maybe you could describe it for us.
It was like concrete, pretty much. I did not know the term caliche until we started digging, and we even hired help to dig some bigger tree holes for us. And I feel bad for those guys because they were chipping away, for 4 hours, and they barely make it down, 2-3 feet.
That sounds like a great workout. That's a great workout. You don't have to feel bad for them. You're paying them to work out, right? So that's not too bad, right?
Yeah, now I learned that you don't have to dig that deep anymore.
That is good.
So I don't do that anymore. But it was an interesting discovery. We had, when we purchased this house, it was just grass lawn in the front yard, mm-hmm. and we were trying to decide whether to purchase a lawnmower or not. And we decided, we don't want to waste water on grass and on resources that it doesn't give us back anything. So we just kind of jump into, let's just grow something that we can eat and see where it take us.
Well, I didn't know we were
know.
allowed to be that rational with our first house you buy. I thought we were just supposed to, make our house look good for the neighbors, because your first house, want to make sure it looks good.
Well, the funny thing is technically this is our fourth house.
Your fourth house, okay. So you had some experience in the past and you realized you don't need to, keep up with the Joneses or anything like that. You basically said, hey, you know what, let's do this for us. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah. Kind of. Before, we were young professionals, just kind of work all day and didn't really have time to enjoy our property that much. But we also travel a lot, and that's what led us to selling our house in Texas. We moved to Texas after living in Ohio for a while, and decided let's just sell everything, move into an RV. So we traveled full time in a fifth wheel RV for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So we have everything we own in that 35-foot RV, and we can just pack up and go in 30 minutes if we don't like our neighbor.
Oh, wow. Well, that's very unique, but awesome at the same time. That's cool that you had that mobility.
Yeah, allow us to explore all over the states to see where we prefer to live and visit different places for extended period of time without spending too much money, because RV parks are pretty cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But we just keep getting brought back to Arizona for work, and we really love the winter and the summer here. Even though it's hot, it's still a lot of outdoor activities all around the area to do. So we decided to settle down here in Tempe, Arizona.
See, and that's amazing because there's so many places you could be, and you've visited so many different places for 5 years. I mean, did you go to every single state or just all the mainland states? I mean, where all did you go?
We've been to Michigan, Florida, New York, Texas, and Arkansas, all over the area. Probably, I will say like 30 states we've been.
Wow.
Within the 5 years of traveling around between work and pleasure. But I'm originally from Taiwan and grew up in the tropics. I prefer warm weather. I do not really like snow that much. And I think that's one of the benefits of growing here in the low desert. You don't have to worry about, we have freezes, but we don't have to deal with snow and all that stuff. So,
yeah, that's true. And where you're at in Tempe, it's like it hardly even frosts where you guys are at. I mean, I've noticed that, especially with all the bananas and how you guys can grow bananas and other tropicals and stuff in that area specifically. It's like you guys have a little less freeze than even we do, 10 or 15 miles from you.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a heat island here because of how dense everything is over here in the urban setting. I think in Chandler and Crane Creek area, things are still quite open.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely a lot cooler there. But we do get freeze damage every now and then. Last year we got down to 26 degrees for a few nights. But a lot of plants just bounce back, the next morning.
Yeah, because it was only at that degree for what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Maybe.
It jumps back up.
It does make growing like stone fruit and some of the more different ranges of fruit that require more chill hour, like things like pistachio. I would love to grow that, but we clearly don't have enough chill hours here. I think at least 800 chill hours for pistachio to grow.
We've got within my family, we've got a 300-acre pistachio farm, but it's in a higher elevation in California. That's still part of our network. My grandpa's old farms and stuff, and we've been playing around with cultivars that might be able to handle it out here. I'm trying to get one of my second uncles to send me some pistachio trees that we think might be able to do it at a low chill. So we've been playing around with some stuff. So that's a secret, but it's not going to be a secret for very long. But it is something. I love those trees. I mean, we love pistachios. I mean, we get them by the boxful from our, from the farm about every year.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful tree. I love the tree. The tree's just
it's beautiful. I mean, this April, end of April, we were driving along the highway to get to Sequoia in California, and we drove through a lot of pistachio farms, and they're just such beautiful trees.
Yep. Yeah, you might have driven by mine. You might have our family.
Yeah, I might have.
The Seton Farms up there. Well, that's awesome. So you talked about being a good black thumb gardener to start with, and so were you? So were you always such a good dirt farmer at the beginning? I mean, tell us about kind of history of gardening for Jackie. Always grown stuff, not grown stuff.
I have tried, because there are things I absolutely love, like lavender, a lot of succulents. So I did a lot of indoor container gardening, and everything just dies, nonstop. And I just kind of gave up. And now I know is because watering and soil and all that conditions that I didn't know about. But the success I have here on our property now is everything I have that's growing really well is directly planted in the ground. And during our research in the beginning, one funny thing is one of our research was going to one of your classes. You've held a gardening class at the local nursery, and that's when we first met you. I also went through research on permaculture. That's actually one of the first things I've learned is permaculture. There used to be a local permaculture community here. And I went through some classes there, and I also watched a lot of documentary like Back to Eden, and they're consistently talking about sheet mulching, putting wood chips down, giving that dirt a clothing, a skin, like a layer to protect them from being cooked by the sun and the UV ray. So by understanding that, cultivating the soil, once you take care of the soil, the plants will be happy, and that truly is, that's the result I have gotten the past 3 years, is if I feed the soil, no matter what I put in the ground, they would just be really happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to grow that soil first, right? That's the first step. Be a soil farmer. And so, people don't have to be discouraged if they're the black thumb farmer, right?
Exactly. And the first thing we did in the front yard is do the sheet mulching. So we were trying to figure out how to kill the Bermuda grass. And we didn't want to use any chemicals. So we learned that you can do sheet mulching or lasagna gardening by laying down really thick layer of cardboard and then compost and then wood chips. And we let it sit like that for about 6 to 8 months. Yeah. And then we started planting. And we planted our first seeds in the ground in the front yard July of 2013. And those seeds are the moringa seeds.
Oh, wow. They are kind of a forest, huh? Right.
Yeah, and they immediately create this kind of microclimate allowing me to grow a lot more stuff in the front yard. And we had to start in the front yard because our backyard is completely hardscaped. It was completely covered in concrete because of the huge dive-in pool we had. And everybody's thinking, okay, have a pool in Arizona, it's great, but we are so afraid of cold that we don't even jump in the pool until the water is like 82 degrees. So that's like a few days out of the year. So we're wasting all this water and electricity and maintenance on the pool. So the second year in, we decided to take the pool completely out. So we hire a crew, come in, break up all the soil, the concrete, and then we had them only fill up halfway, and we built a step down, kind of a terrace, sunken garden. And that allowed us to convert our backyard now into a food forest too. So we started in the front yard, which is facing west, and it was one of the most challenging part is to garden facing west. I feel like, because it's you get all that afternoon sun that's super hot and intense, and so a lot of plants I experimented in the beginning were struggling quite a bit until the moringas got really big and start to be able to protect the other more sensitive plants.
Yeah, you started protecting against the most extreme climate, and then you've got now a new microclimate.
Mm-hmm. And now I run into a problem of having too much shade.
Yeah. Now things start getting a little spindlier and stuff, not growing as thick and dense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do grow tall fast because they're trying to reach for the sun. They compete with each other trying to get more sun, but then they're out of your reach if you want to grow fruit and stuff. So we're still trying to balance that out a little bit because we really like the shade to be able to walk under. Mm-hmm. It's really nice to have an area on your property that's 10, 15 degrees, sometimes 20 degrees cooler than what's, your next door neighbor who just have gravel on their property.
Well, I know one of my favorite things with the moringa is that it does grow so fast and that you can actually grow some things inside of it. And I'm on your Facebook page, so if you guys want to check out what Jackie's up to, you can go and search Epic Yard Farm. So Epic Yard Farm on Facebook. So go to Facebook, search Epic Yard Farm. You can see a lot of pictures from her garden. You can actually see some great pictures from her right underneath her moringa trees that she's got in her front yard. And you're growing some things up inside that moringa tree. You want to tell us what you're growing up inside those moringas?
So one thing I'm experimenting is growing dragon fruit, training them to climb the moringa tree. The dragon fruit cactus is a cactus, but it's a tropical cactus. So it does not like the dry air or the intense sun from our Arizona sun. But the moringa tree provide enough shade, just enough shade to protect it, but still allow enough light through for them to produce. So I have 3 dragon fruits right now climbing up the front yard moringa tree, and I'm using the crotches of the moringa to become the scaffolding and the trellis to train the dragon fruit to eventually drape down when they essentially will produce the flower and the fruit.
Yeah, so they can kind of fan down, because I know with the dragon fruit, they kind of best have them grow so they fan down, and then the fruit can still stay above the ground. They don't end up sitting on the ground and rot out and stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned also through research, and that's one fun thing with gardening, is there's so much science behind everything and trial and error. It's just so much fun to learn all this new knowledge. But one thing I've learned from other dragon fruit farmers is they said you kind of have to let the branch drape down. Once that happens, it sends a hormonal signal to force bud to happen. So there are certain things that plants do will trigger flowering and production. So that's one fun fact I've learned with dragon fruit.
Now I see a picture. Is this just from yesterday that actually showing a dragon fruit even producing? So you got a flower that's forming?
That one is actually from a local gardener in Mesa, and she has a gigantic patch of dragon fruit climbing on her Palo Verde tree. I think she has that for 10 years now, maybe 15, and there's like maybe 6 or 8 different varieties of dragon fruit just intertwined climbing on that Palo Verde, and she has probably 10 different flowers that bloomed this past week or so.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. So there's definitely success in, because in nature, that's how dragon fruit grow. They climb other trees, they reach for the sun above the canopy, and then they fruit. So it's kind of, you're mimicking nature, and that's kind of what I like to do is, our style of gardening is really, really, truly create a fruit forest. So you kind of forage in my garden when you go out and harvest.
Mm-hmm.
You're always surprised with what you find because you're not sticking to like a crop schedule necessarily. You're just kind of going out and see what is producing.
Yep, just see what's there, see what's hiding underneath the leaves, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because in a way, I want it wild and essentially be self-sustaining because we still travel a lot. We sometimes will be gone for 5 weeks at a time. So I can't have stuff that's super manicured, but I also don't want things to be so wild that, you know, our neighbors are going to start calling the city and say, hey, you got to have them take care of stuff.
Well, and I know
But,
you've done a great job of creating some very beautiful trellises and raised beds, you know, with some beautiful steel work that you guys have done. I mean, you guys bring the art back into the garden as well, which I think really helps people realize that it's intentional, right? It's not all just a crazy wild space. It's like you meant to do this.
Yes, yes, and through landscaping design, like how Agriscaping is doing, you know, you can show people, you can make edible landscape beautiful too. One of the first things my husband said before we start growing was, do not make our garden look like a farm. No rows, no, you know, just make it beautiful. And so that kind of triggered our polyculture kind of style of planting is we always mix things up. You know, we don't plant too many of the same type of crop close together. And that really helped with pest control and even like soil fertility because you don't have the same plant trying to absorb the same type of nutrients from the soil in close proximity. So in a way, we found that we have established an ecosystem that we don't have to do pest control, we don't have to fertilize whatsoever. So everything we provide to our plants is water and just go out and harvest, basically.
Yeah, that's the way to go. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that plants, when grown together, can offset a lot of the challenges that people are buying a lot of chemicals in order to mitigate. You know, like all the bugs that might be attacking their plants or the diseases they might have and things like that is often just a result of the fact that they're grown too close together or not with healthy enough soil, or they don't have the polyculture, as you said. They have that monoculture perspective, and so they got a whole bed just full of tomatoes, or they have a whole bed just full of kale, or they have a whole bed full of something, and they're not interplanting things like you guys are, and so they have a lot more challenges. They don't realize that if there's an outbreak in aphids here, that on that one plant, it's going to now end up across all the plants, and now they have to mitigate it. Whereas if they do like what you're doing, interplant stuff, then all of a sudden you have less of a problem.
Yeah, and I try to explain to people in a way like you're basically building a buffet line.
There you go.
For the aphids to go one after another. If you put something in between that, say, like a toy onion or, let's say, asparagus in between lettuces, then they're broken off. You know, they can't see what is the next plant they can jump to or go eat. If they don't find anything they like, they just kind of disappear. From my understanding, I don't know where they went. Eventually, sometimes ladybugs show up and things like that. So if you grow plants that can attract beneficial insects like ladybugs, lacewings, assassin bugs, things like that, they will take care of all the pests for you. Even birds, some people don't like birds coming into their yard, but we constantly see birds pull off, you know, caterpillars and hornworms and even eating aphids for us. So
Yeah.
once you establish a really balanced ecosystem, it really takes care of itself. And it's a very low maintenance way of gardening, I believe.
I'm with you on that. It's really letting nature do some of the work or a lot of the work for you, just like you realize that you don't have to dig out all the caliche necessarily. There's actually some nutrients and all that stuff, but we got to break it up. We got to add the nutrients in. We got to add some biomass in. And I'm looking at a picture of your front yard right now. Maybe you can tell us a little bit of what you now have growing in that front yard, and what were the things that you started growing that helped break up that caliche and really turn it into something more usable?
You know what? I don't really know exactly what did it, but I feel like over the years, all the wood chips that's broken down had add organic matter into the soil. And another thing we do a lot is we don't maintain a compost pile. We have a very small property, and I've tried the compost pile method, and it didn't work out for me. So I have done this burying kitchen scrap or built in-ground worm towers to do my composting. And when you integrate your composting directly in the garden that way, I find things break down a lot faster without a lot of work, and the earthworms and all the shredder insects will take that organic matter and integrate it into the soil directly for you. So, you know, the last year and a half, I've been doing the in-ground composting by putting kitchen scraps in the ground, and that I've seen a lot of great results from that, because I immediately see increase in earthworm castings on the surface of my soil, like a lot. So people spending a lot of money buying bags and bags of earthworm castings from the store, you can easily do that without spending a dime.
Right.
Just by putting the scraps in the ground.
That's perfect. And so are you just kind of hiding them everywhere in the yard? You just kind of dig a little hole and throw some of that in there, or how are you doing that?
Yep. So
Simple, huh?
what I've done is for areas that I don't have worm tower in the ground, I will dig maybe like 6 inches, and then I'll bury everything in, put wood chips over it, and that way the insects or rodents can't find it. And then the worm towers is I have put holes in like a big PVC pipe, and then bury it in the ground, and that allows me to put the scraps in there and cover it up with like a dish or something so rodents can't get in there. And that way the earthworms and other insects can easily access through underground.
Yeah, it's perfect. So you're building that soil, using the life that's in there. And I'm on the picture that I'm seeing here from your garden. In the front yard, you have some sunflowers. Are those some wild sunflowers, or those sunchokes? What do you got that's growing with all the big yellow flowers there?
So those are sunflowers from, I think, one variety or two variety of sunflowers I've planted 2 years ago. And then when the birds come and eat those sunflowers, they basically scattered and planted all these sunflowers for me. So this year we have a gigantic sunflower forest in the front yard.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that attracted a lot of different birds. You know, we have all kinds of songbirds show up in our front yard, and
Oh, that's fun.
I have people walking by and say, "Are those birds yours?" Or they're looking at birds they've never seen before, like the rosy cheek parrots and stuff like
Oh, the
that.
little rosy-cheeked lovebirds that you probably
Yeah,
get? Oh,
yeah, the
yeah.
lovebirds.
They come in families when those eyes fly in. There's usually a few of them.
Yeah, now we can hear them every morning.
Oh, boy. They probably start off sounding great, and after a little while, maybe a little annoying. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not the most pleasant
No,
songbirds.
nope, they're not. But that's one plant that I know for us, when we're looking to break up clay, I'll grow sunflowers. That's one of my favorite ones. Sunflowers, amaranth, quinoa. A lot of those have the deep root that can help break up the soil, and then when I cut them down in the fall, then they leave that open core that then water. Now I've got a deep water channel that's already been dug through all that caliche for me, and I can put in some, good compost tea or things that we can just kind of pour in and around those leftover roots, and then it helps break down that soil and build in more soil mass for years and years to come. So that's a lot of cool stuff you've got growing in that front yard. Looks like you got some lemongrass too, some peaches.
One of the things I share with people is to help with plants to survive their first or second summer is to plant very heat tolerant plants on the west side of the more heat or sun sensitive plants to protect them. So lemongrass is one of my favorite for protecting the root zone and the base of any kind of new fruit trees you put in, because lemongrass will take our sun all day, our heat all day, and it really creates this shield and a microclimate in the root zone for your new trees.
That's awesome. And so what is it protecting right now? What do you have it protecting right now?
It's protecting a tropic snow peach, a white peach. This guy I purchased in October last year, and it was only like 2 feet tall. Now it's almost 5 feet tall.
Oh, that's great. And did you get any fruit off of it this year, or did you pull them off and wait for next year?
I pulled them off. It was too small. It was in the spring. It was still only like maybe 2.5 feet tall, so I didn't think it was a good idea to keep the fruit.
Yeah, I know a lot of people out there. It's like they'll keep all the fruit on there. They'll keep all the branches too, and they'll big spindly branches and things like that. But I know it's important to help those plants establish the root system first, establish the branch, the lattice structure, especially for things like peaches, because the easiest way to keep birds off your peaches is not let the birds see that you have any peaches.
Right, absolutely.
If you got all that green growth, if you got a really dense tree, like it looks like you're growing now with that snow peach, the tropic snow peach, that they're not going to be able to see the peach. But if you left it small and just let one thing grow, or if you got that really tall tree that everyone's like, oh, I wanted the tallest tree, and it's got hardly any branches on it, but it's really tall, and then they never clip it. They got peaches that'll grow on it, but they're totally exposed, and everybody can see them, and all the birds are just waiting for you to leave so they can peck a hole in it and eat up your peaches.
Yeah, and that's one thing I also learned. I've researched a lot on pruning and stuff like that for peaches and apples and all the other areas where it's much cooler climate. They're all talking about opening up the center, letting the light in. But for us, that most likely will result in sun scald fruit.
Yeah, sun-scalded fruit, and birds will eat them all. I mean, yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's a really important point, too. And because research is easy to come by with our YouTube world, right? But getting the information for where you live, that might be a little harder to come by. Getting that professional support for anybody, wherever you live, it's important to get that localized perspective because, yeah, you can get a lot of misinformation. I know people who grew orchards thinking that here in the Phoenix area, and they were all growing based on an open format. And they were trying to build them and grow them that route, and they would get scalded. They hardly had any fruit production. And anybody that lives out here, they've probably heard about Schneff Farms, but they hadn't heard about any other farm. But Schneff Farms is one that grows peaches because all the other farmers except Schneff used to grow in that open core format, and most of those didn't survive. They couldn't grow enough peaches to justify having all those farms, and they ended up going under. Whereas the Schneff Farms, those guys grew bush style. They grew to shade everything and try to hide the peaches as best they could, grow a lot of leaves, and let the fruit produce, deep inside the plant, and then they got these massive peaches, and they go, they cracked the code, as it were, for the Arizona area.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult topic to research because our region is so unique.
Yeah.
But as I research, there's other pockets around the world that have the same challenge and same conditions, and some of them figure some stuff out that we could learn from. So one thing I've learned during research was Israel, they're the ones who came up with drip irrigation because they have very similar conditions there, and things that they grow there that will thrive there will do well here too. And so is like southern region of Himalaya, where it's more arid and hot, certain parts of India, even Australia. So I have over time learned from all these different places their different practices there, instead of just searching within the U.S. So a global community kind of networking and learning with similar climate conditions is also very important, I think.
See, I'm wondering, maybe we should have a class that just teaches people how to learn, in order to serve, because it's important. And you keyed in on it right there. It's like you got to really geolocate your sourcing of information and really make sure that you're getting that support, and make sure that it's a type of climate that matches your own. And I was surprised at first that we actually have some students, people that are in Israel that are studying with Agriscaping now. We have a person that's also, she splits time in Israel to study and to teach. That's working on her educator certification with us and stuff right now, and it has a lot to do with the same thing. She's like, hey, Arizona's like Israel. And she's like, where you guys are growing is just like where I'm growing. Same kind of nasty soil and everything,
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was there in Jerusalem, I see the stuff they're growing there, and it was just like, it's like home.
There you go. Even a little more arid there, I've found, than even here.
The Jerusalem is a little higher in elevation, I think, so it was a little cooler there. But when we were there, we stayed at a monastery, and they have like pear trees, apple trees, olive, of course, and they have very similar condition and very similar type of plants growing.
That's awesome. Now, despite the fact that you live in a desert like Israel, and everyone's thinking this arid, barren place, but you've also talked about some of the you've hinted at some of the tropical things that you've been growing. And in Taiwan, that's a little bit more tropical, right?
Yes, in Taiwan, we're just on the north cancer of the equator. So we have a lot of mountain ranges. 70% of Taiwan is mountain ranges. So we have higher elevation for growing pears, peaches, apples, and then lower elevation for growing banana, mango. So we have a wide range of fruit available in Taiwan. So I grew up pretty spoiled eating all kinds of fruit, and I didn't know until I came to America and found out that it's actually quite expensive to get access to those fruit that I grew up with. So that is kind of my goal. Also, gardening here is to create a pocket of microclimate that allow me to grow tropical fruit that's a lot harder to come by here.
So what kind of things are you growing now? What have you been able to be successful with so far, and what's in the works?
So the most successful thing I have on our property right now is our banana. It's called the ice cream banana or blue Java banana that has kind of a bluish hue on the skin of the banana. And that has created a microclimate now allowing me to grow things like papaya, avocado, guava, and also I have passion fruit. And right now I'm experimenting. Some of the newer things I've learned from the South America is things like Jamaican cherry, cherry of the Rio Grande. What else?
You got some Barbados cherry in there too?
Yeah, exactly, Barbados cherry. Yeah. So I'm learning all these new fruit that I've not had because they're more from the South America region.
Now, which one of the fruits so far that you've tasted was a big surprise for you on the positive side, and what might be one that was on the taste wise, surprise on the negative side?
So one of the positive one is the Jamaican cherry. The Jamaican cherry is also sometimes called a strawberry cherry because of the flower looking like a strawberry flower. But its fruit is tiny, like a jelly bean size, and it tastes like cotton candy. So it's kind of a fun fruit to kind of chew on. It's got kind of a thick skin, but the inside, the fruit pulp has the sweetness and the fragrance of a cotton candy. So that is
Wow.
kind of a fun fruit to have because it also can take our heat and our sun, and it grows just as fast as the moringa.
Wow. So how big do
So a
those
lot.
ones get? I haven't even, I'm pulling it up right now. Here's me Googling, right in the middle of this, trying to pull these things up. Yeah, I'm looking at these little guys. That is a fun little plant, and those flowers look great. But how big do these
Yeah.
things get?
So um, in their native kind of environment. So when I went back to Singapore, I was in Singapore for high school, but I didn't know that there are tons of Jamaican trees, Jamaican cherry trees around Singapore, and they could get up to 20 feet tall,
Oh, awesome.
and just as wide. They're kind of a tall, weepy, a beautiful form if you prune. So you let it go tall and then you prune off the bottom branches. It will arch. It form this kind of a really weepy, beautiful archway, and which create a nice shade for whatever you want to protect or more heat and sun sensitive underneath. So that's another great tree to have here for microclimate
Oh,
um,
that's awesome.
in your garden. So I planted 2 of them this spring, and they both have already grown quite a bit. And so that's a new tree I'm experimenting and very excited about.
Well, that sounds like a great one. I know I've got I've got sisu trees that I'm ready to rip them out. We started growing those. They were here when we got the house and stuff, and they were small, and now they've grown huge, and they're tearing up my back wall. And so I'm like, okay, I got to replace these guys with something because I still like the shade, I like the microclimate it's produced for us. And
Mm-hmm.
I keep looking at different edible options and stuff, the moringa tree, and I've got some of those, but I feel like I've got too many moringas already. So it's like,
I know.
because I can't eat enough of the leaves, It's like, oh, the leaves are good, but,
Well, are you eating the pods and the flowers?
I haven't been eating the pods and the flowers. Maybe I'll start doing that, but I'm
Oh,
going to eat the leaves. You like the
So
pods
I
and
don't
flowers
we
better?
I like to use them for more. So the leaves, we do them in juices. We run through the juicer with the leaves, but I mainly use the flowers for stir fry. So if you do a scrambled egg, it's
Mm-hmm.
great to have the flowers with chopped up onions, stir fried, and then mix it into an omelet or frittata. It's great to use it that way. And then the beans, when they're really skinny, like maybe no more than half centimeter thick um, of girth for the bean, those are still tender and you can eat them like fresh as like a long bean,
Like a green bean?
like a green bean,
Oh,
yes.
all right.
So you
Yeah, I
can
haven't
put
tried
them,
eating
you can
them.
chop them up, put them in salads or stir fry them. And then when they get to a little closer to the 1 centimeter kind of thickness, then the skin gets tough. And at that stage, I don't eat them anymore. I let them mature to about the size of your middle finger or your thumb. That thickness, but still green. Then you can process it by just peeling lightly on the skin of the green pot and then chop them up into about 2 to 3 inch sections and cook them in the curry stew, and they will soak up all that flavor of the curry, and you eat it like edamame. So that's one of my favorite way to consume the moringa pods.
Well, that's fun, and that reminds me a lot of another tree love to eat the beans on, and that's the Palo Verde. And
Mm-hmm.
those things taste like peas. I mean, I love the Palo Verde bean. I was just out we were doing a consult at a property up in Cave Creek, and they really wanted to add some more edible plants and stuff. And like, maybe we should rip this one out. I was like, don't rip that one out. And I went over and I grabbed a couple pots. And I said, taste this thing. You got to taste the bean. And
Yeah.
after they had it, the guy's like, dude, I love peas. These are like, I didn't know I had a pea tree in my yard. I hated
Oh,
this thing,
that's
but
so
now I love
funny.
it. Favorite tree, you know. But that's the cool thing. People haven't even been introduced to their own landscape many times, you know, that there's things they can eat, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
good, and it's already growing
Mm-hmm.
itself. You know, we don't have to kill everything in order to grow something. We can learn from nature. We can cultivate things that you know, can grow on their own, right? It doesn't have to take a
Yeah,
lot of work.
absolutely. Like things like sweet potato.
Oh yeah.
In America, most people think, you grow sweet potato for the tubers, but in Asia, like in Taiwan, that's one of the main summer vegetables. We eat the leaves of the sweet potato vine. And when we get hit with monsoon or typhoon in Taiwan, that sweet potato leaves become one of the most expensive crop
Wow.
in the store. Um, it's that much sought after. So we cook them kind of like spinach, how the Italian process spinach. We just lightly saute them in oil, garlic, salt and pepper. Sometimes you put in hot pepper. Um, but it's also used in soups. So that's one of the summer greens that I encourage people to consume. You can't grow the regular English spinach here in the summer, but you can definitely grow sweet potato here, and they go wild here in
Yeah,
the summertime.
that's a great one. I love that thing for ground cover. And then what I've also learned from it is that it naturally gets rid of Bermuda grass. So growing sweet potatoes, you can actually grow sweet potatoes in Bermuda grass, and it ends up taking over the Bermuda grass, and the Bermuda won't come back. So this is another
Oh,
way
wow.
as a
That's a good
means.
tip.
Yeah, it's like, wow, let's get rid of Bermuda grass, grow sweet potatoes. Just throw some of those, put some potato slips in there, you know, mow it down low, put in the sweet
Mm-hmm.
potato slips, put the watering on just the way you had it with the grass. You probably don't even need to do that much. But what'll end up
Mm-hmm.
happening is that sweet potato vine, that'll take over. And it's great. So that's another great way to do, rather than doing the sheet mulching. If you don't want to do that, summertime, great time to get rid of that grass, turn it into something edible and productive. And sweet potato vines are awesome for that.
Yeah, and that's awesome tip. I didn't know about that. I do know, like, when it's very shady, Bermuda grass doesn't like shade.
No.
So I think the dense foliage from the sweet potato does kind of kill the Bermuda. But another thing I love about sweet potato vine is when the winter comes and that first frost hit, all the leaves will turn black and they become black gold. They break down so quickly and then add this organic matter in place um, for you as a top layer of compost. And then what I normally do is I'll just put a thin layer of wood chips above that in the winter time and just let them sit there over the winter. And then in the spring, I'll have new sweet potato come up by themselves. I don't even have to plant them every year. So it's a great cover crop. And like you said, it also helps kill the Bermuda grass. It's such a great multifunctional plant.
Well, see, I love this conversation, and we're getting towards the end of it. We got to kind of close up now, but I love your hunger to continue to learn, Jackie, and it's really fun to also acknowledge like that you've been in our class. How many weeks? When did you start our mastery class?
I started this semester, so
This semester, so you're like right in the middle of it. We're kind of getting to the end of that this semester and stuff, and so it's fun that you're learning. And even in this moment, it's like, oh, this is something I just taught you that we just talked about. I just learned some things from you. We're always learning from each other inside of these types of networks and working together to figure things out. And I love it. So it's I'm so curious what more we're going to learn from each other as we continue moving forward with this stuff. But what kind of what kind of advice do you have for people? What's some great tips to help them get going if they were a black thumb grower like you might have been at the beginning?
I would say don't give up and also keep a more of a trial and error mentality instead of thinking you're going to be successful right away. Set smaller goals,
There you
um, and that will help you, kind of chomp along and learn new things, because everybody's property is different. Everybody's microclimate is different. So your discovery will be different from somebody else's. And that's the fun part, to figure it out on your own, or, try to compare notes with other people in close proximity to your where you're at. So, and they're just such generous and helpful gardening community out there that help is not far away at all.
That's right. And we hopefully can continue to grow a growing community of people that really understand where you live, and that you can get connected to them easily, professional level people too that can come and help you with your garden so it doesn't become a burden, that it can get support even if you're out of town or want to leave for 5 weeks, right? Just like you do, right?
Right.
Because sometimes, like with chickens, I mean, we got chickens, rabbits, quail, fish, and when we leave for any length of time, it's difficult sometimes for us to even find within even our own network people that can come and take care of that stuff. So we've cultivated now within Agriscaping a lot more pros that can come and they can help out. And it's kind of fun that way. And we'll continue to do that. So thank you, Jackie, for being with us today. Again, you can find Jackie at onfacebook.com. If you just search Epic Yard Farm, you'll be able to find her. And she's great at answering questions on her Facebook page and stuff as well. She does her own tours, so if you're in the Phoenix area and you want to check out and see if you see her little yard tours, she just started doing those. And so check that out. And if you want any more support wherever you're at, from Agriscaping pros that are around where you're at, check out agriscaping.com and look at our Get Certified or Get Started. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of get your own assessment done to see what your yard can do. I mean, find out what your yard can really do for you. You can find through agriscaping.com, and we can also help connect you with some local pros wherever you're at. We've got now pros growing and studying in different parts of the country, as well as a couple different countries in the world. So really cool thing, this movement of local food and more localized food economy, much more sustainable approach. It's been a fun thing to be a part of, and I'm so glad you've been a part of it with us, Jackie, and look forward to seeing what other cool things you create.
Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome. Well, we'll see you again hopefully real soon, Jackie, and everybody else that's on here. We look forward to having you on the next podcast as it comes along. Again, check out agriscaping.com and check out Jackie over at Epic Yard Farm, found on Facebook. See you next time.